Sirens are almost always female. Almost. Submitted by Forget December. Let me preface this by saying the only reason I'm still alive is pure luck. After the events that transpired several weeks ago, I'll be honest, I should be dead. Everyone else who experienced what I went through is dead, but I was lucky enough to survive. So please, pay close attention, because this could happen to you, and if you know what to expect, you'll have a much better chance of survival. I was an SR in the United States Navy. I had finished boot camp and was assigned to the USS Victoria. I was told to expect a lot of traveling, but not much combat. The Victoria was small, and she was mostly used for simple tasks, like coastal patrol around South America. Boring, I know, but I couldn't complain. I worked hard to get here, and I would take whatever job they gave me with a smile. For the first few months of deployment, nothing of major interest happened. Mostly we sailed along our predetermined path, checking to make sure nothing posed a threat to the States, while also making sure the locals of nearby islands weren't getting into trouble. We did have a run-in with a small pirate vessel, but after a quick firefight, we returned to our normal schedule as if nothing happened. That's the life of a sailor, I guess. But in late August, something happened that will haunt me for the rest of my life. During a routine sweep of the South American coast that would normally send us in the direction of the States, a tropical storm brewed out of nowhere, and it hit us hard. Tropical storms weren't uncommon this time of year, but we still had to act fast. Huge waves were hitting our ship, and we worked frantically to make sure we didn't capsize or lose anyone overboard. After what seemed like hours, the storm eventually passed, and after muster, all hands were accounted for. We weren't out of trouble yet. The storm had blown us way off course. Along with that, the ship had sustained some damage to its engines. We were forced to dock in a port city in Barbuda to get a better idea of what kind of situation we were in. I wasn't complaining. I was glad to be alive, and the fact that we were in a beautiful tropical city didn't hurt either. I just thought of this as my official military-issued vacation. Once we docked, our engineers did a thorough check of the engines, and the crew was gathered on deck for the report. The good news was that we weren't stranded here. The damage from the storm wasn't severe, and with some hard work, the Victoria would be up and running in no time. The bad news was that in this case, in no time meant about 3 days. It could have been faster, but we didn't have the necessary parts to replace the damaged ones in the engine and had to work with what we did have. So, we would be stuck here for 3 days. So, some of us saw this as a nuisance. They were the ones who took their jobs more seriously than everyone else. Others were bothered at the fact that they'd have to spend 3 days on a tropical island working and not enjoying their time there. Those guys were mostly engineers. But for the rest of us, this was perfect. A chance to kick back and enjoy 3 days of sun and waves, maybe flirt with cute native girls, and overall, relax after several months at sea. The captain was surprisingly lenient on those of us that couldn't do anything. The engineers had to stay on the ship, as well as the higher-ranking officers. But the rest of us were lucky. Our captain told us that as long as we kept in radio contact, and didn't stray too far from the ship or the port city, that we could pretty much take it easy until the repairs were finished. For the first 2 days, we enjoyed our impromptu vacation. We hit up bars, flirted with the locals, sunbathed on the beaches, and had loads of fun. We were a little disappointed when the 3rd day rolled around because we knew it meant that our little vacation would be over. We were completely unaware of the nightmare that we would soon be facing. On the 3rd day, we were informed that the engine repairs wouldn't be finished until late afternoon, so we had the rest of the day to enjoy the island. After discussing our options, 4 of my fellow shipmates and I decided that for the last day, we wanted to lounge on a beach. There was Simon, Anthony, Tobias, and Jeffrey, as well as me, all eager to soak up a bit more sun. Unfortunately, the only beach we could go to was full of people, and we wanted somewhere private. That's when Tobias spoke up. "I know somewhere we could go," he said to the rest of us. He smiled, a grin that suggested he knew a juicy secret, and we all wanted in on it. When he didn't speak after that, Simon pressed further. "Well, don't keep us all in suspense," he asked, excitement lacing his voice. "What's this place you're talking about?" Tobias simply kept smiling, then turned and walked off towards the grove of trees on the opposite side of the beach. He motioned for us to follow him, which we did. Wherever this secret location was, Tobias wanted to keep it a surprise. As we walked through the forest, Tobias started talking. "Yesterday, while everyone else was off doing their own thing, I decided to explore," he said over his shoulder, "and what I found was awesome." "And what exactly did you find?" Anthony asked. "Patience, my friend, patience," Tobias said, adding a mysterious tone to his reply. He was the youngest of us and tended to get under our skin, but I could tell he wanted this surprise to be great and made sure not to spill too much about it. After 20 minutes of walking through the forest, we came upon a large rock wall with a cave leading into darkness. Tobias pulled out a flashlight from his bag, and everyone except me followed suit. "Are you sure this is safe?" I asked. Tobias gasped and put his hand on his chest in mock surprise. "Connor," he said sarcastically, "you're right. It's much too dangerous. Someone could trip and scrape their knee. What would we do then?" The rest of the group joined in the teasing, laughing at my caution. All right, I get it," I said, annoyed. "Connor, it's fine," Tobias said, "I got through this cave to the other side and back, and I'm no worse for wear. The 5 of us together can handle it just as easily as I did. I promise you." After taking a deep breath, I relaxed, pulling out my flashlight and followed the rest of the group into the cave. It was dark as night in there. Without the flashlight, I couldn't see any better than if I had just closed my eyes. But luckily, the heavy-duty flashlights we carried with us illuminated the dark just fine. After walking for 10 more minutes, I saw the light at the end of the tunnel. As we got closer, it was easy enough to see without the flashlights, so we turned them off and stowed them in our bags. "We're almost there," Tobias said from the front of the group. "Get ready to be amazed, gentlemen." When we finally stepped out of the cave, I was stunned at what I saw. Tobias had found a secret cove hidden on one side of the island. There was a beach surrounding a large wave pool, forming a crescent shape. There were palm trees on the right side of the pool, a rock face extending off to the left, and white, pristine sand stretching out in front of us. But the best part? There wasn't a single soul here but us. The beach was completely devoid of people. We had a tropical paradise all to ourselves. We were ecstatic, and we immediately started to enjoy the place. Tobias made us promise to clean up after ourselves before we left, which we did. We ran down to the beach and set up. We had brought a cooler filled with beers and sandwich materials, some towels and a speaker to play music. We had everything we needed to enjoy this place, and enjoy it we did. We swam in the crisp, clear water, swung from the palm trees into the ocean. We sang our favorite songs as loudly as we could. We weren't very good at it, but we didn't care. Nobody but us even knew this place existed. We had so much fun that we lost track of time, and only realized it because of Anthony. "Hey, guys, it's getting kind of late," Anthony said. "Maybe we should head back." We groaned, upset at the notion of leaving our little slice of paradise, but we knew he was right. If we weren't back before it got too dark, we'd catch hell from our captain, and besides that, clouds were starting to form, hinting at another possible storm. So, we grudgingly started to clean up. I walked closer to the rock face to make sure we hadn't accidentally left any litter behind, and that's when I heard it. It was soft and distant, but I could just barely make it out. "Hey, guys, come here," I said to the others, motioning for them to come over. They all joined me by the rocks. "Do you hear that?" I asked. They all fell silent, trying to listen for what I was talking about. "Yeah, I do," Simon finally said. "It sounds like singing." "Who is that?" We decided to investigate further. I didn't worry too much about being late. I'm sure we could have made it after finding the source of the singing. It wasn't like we were planning on staying very long after getting our answer anyways. We walked along the rocky coastline, rounding a corner and finding the singing source, and it was not at all what we expected. Sitting on the rocks a good 30 feet away, 5 of the most beautiful women I had ever seen in my life were singing a gentle, soothing tune. They were completely naked but seemed to be unbothered by the rocks they were sitting on. When they noticed us, they made no attempts to cover themselves or hide. They just kept singing their song. I made eye contact with one of them, a beautiful redhead. She grinned mischievously, raised her hand, and beckoned for me to come to her, making it clear what she wanted. Now, most men would jump at an opportunity like this. If most men saw a stunningly beautiful, naked woman show them that they were interested in having sex, they'd either have to be stupid, gay or in a relationship to turn them down. I was not most men. I was a sailor, a member of the military. I was trained to be vigilant, cautious of potentially dangerous people and situations. But something was causing my head to swim at that moment. I couldn't think straight, couldn't use logic or try to figure out a reasonable approach to take. All I could think of was getting to that redhead and giving her what we both wanted. I started walking towards her, vaguely aware of my fellow sailors doing the same, but I didn't care. I only cared about the beautiful redhead, and her enchanting, illustrious singing. I kept walking, my heart pounding with anticipation and excitement, any other thoughts getting pushed farther from my mind the closer I got to her. But then, just before I stepped within arm's reach of her, she stopped singing. They all did. My reality came crashing back down on me like a massive tidal wave, and I regained my composure. I looked down and saw that I had unconsciously started removing my clothes. I looked around and saw my friends in the same stupor, all in similar stages of undress. I looked back at the redhead, preparing to demand answers of what she had done to me, but I realized she was no longer focused on me. Instead, she and the other women were looking at the end of the rock face, away from where we had come from. Then I realized something else. Although all the women had stopped singing, the beach wasn't silent. Aside from the sound of the waves lapping against the stone, I could faintly make out another sound. It was another voice singing. But this one was different. A deep baritone voice was singing a song similar to what the women had performed, but it was altered. The women's song was alluring and enchanting. The song I heard now was foreboding. Haunting, even, and it was getting closer. The women shrieked in terror, pulling my attention away from the approaching singing. I watched in disbelief as the women in front of me changed. Fins grew on their backs, arms, and legs. Their fingers and toes became webbed, and their skin became covered in scales. Immediately after changing, the creatures that I thought were human leapt into the water and swam hard in the opposite direction of the haunting music. I had never in my life seen any human swim as fast as they did. It was clear that they weren't human. "Hey guys," Simon said quietly, "should we be worried about what those girls were scared of?" Simon was right. The singing voice wasn't faint anymore. I could hear it clear as day. It was loud, and it shook me to my core. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Stone-cold terror. Not the kind of fear you feel when your life is in danger during a firefight, the kind that is balanced out with adrenaline. This was the fear you felt as a child, laying in your bed in the middle of the night when you could have sworn that something made a noise in your closet and that whatever it was, it wasn't something you'd want to meet. I stood there, listening to whatever it was getting closer and closer until finally, I saw it. A hand reached up from the ocean, grabbing onto the ledge of the rock face. Then another, and another, and another. A hulking mass pulled itself up from the ocean, and when it was up, stood still on the rocky shore, staring at us. Whatever it was, it also wasn't human, and those women were right to swim away in a panic. The creature stood about 8 feet tall. It had a humanoid frame, with mottled green skin covered in moss and seaweed. Its long, unkempt and water-damaged hair obstructed most of its face. It had 4 long, muscular arms, with fingers that ended in dagger-like claws. Its torso was just as massive, and its legs were extremely muscular, having fins and what looked like 12 webbed toes. It was, by far, the most terrifying creature I had ever seen in my life. But just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, the wind from the brewing storm picked up, blowing the creature's hair away from its face. If I wasn't frozen in place by fear, I would have screamed. The creature had no face, or at least, not in the traditional sense. It lacked eyes and a nose. Instead, 2 mouths covered the majority of its face, one on top of the other. Its upper mouth had rows upon rows of jagged, razor-sharp teeth, seeming to stretch to the back of its throat. By contrast, its lower mouth had no teeth at all, and hung wide open, wider than I thought possible. It was as if its lower jaw wasn't connected to its skull, and from that gaping maw, came its haunting, terrifying melody. Every fiber of my being was screaming at me to turn tail and run, and there was nothing more I wanted to do than just that. But for some reason, I couldn't. I was frozen in place, utterly terrified, but completely unable to move. I could only watch helplessly as the creature lumbered slowly towards us. It continued forward until it was standing directly in front of Tobias. Then, with its 4 powerful arms, it picked him up and bit his head off in one swift motion. Blood spurted from the ragged stump where Tobias's head once was. The monster chewed on Tobias's head with several sickening crunches, then swallowed the entire mass in one go. But the entire time, it never stopped its song. It dropped Tobias's limp body, turning and moving on to Simon, then Anthony, then Jeffrey. Each time, the creature tore off their heads, swallowing them whole, and each time, it never ceased its song. Then, it turned to me. Tears were streaming down my face, as I prayed for someone to save me, for a chance to live. Then, whether it be from divine intervention or just a massive stroke of luck, I was given that chance. The rain from the coming storm had started to pour down around us, and that, combined with the wind, caused a stone about the size of a football to become dislodged from one of the larger rocks the creature and I were standing next to. It fell, bouncing once off the side of the rock, then hit the creature square in the back of the head. It wasn't large enough to kill it or even knock it unconscious, but it did cause the creature to lose its focus and stop singing. I suddenly had control of my limbs again and wasted no time. I ran back the way I came as fast as I could, terrified of the possibility that the creature would follow, but not daring to look back to confirm. I rounded the rock face, sprinting up the beach and towards the cave. I quickly scooped up my bag from our pile of equipment and pulled out my flashlight, clicking it on and stumbling into the cave. I didn't stop running until I was on the Victoria. My fellow shipmates were pestering me with questions, wondering what the hell was going on. I was hyperventilating, sobbing loudly and nearly on the verge of pissing myself. Once I managed to calm down enough to speak clearly, the captain was in front of me, demanding to know where the others were. I told them about what I saw. There was a monster on this island, and it killed them all. Of course, they were skeptical at first. But after insisting that what I was saying was the truth, the captain decided to humor me. He gathered 15 other sailors and told me to lead him to where this monster was. I said I wouldn't go anywhere near that place again until we were all wearing noise-canceling headphones and armed to the teeth. Grudgingly, he obliged, and once we all had rifles, I led them back to the cave, then the beach, and finally, the rock face. I was terrified of the prospect that the creature was still there. What if it started singing again? What if the headphones didn't work and it killed us all? All these thoughts ran through my head as we rounded the corner to find nothing. The rock face was completely barren. The creature and my friends were all gone. There wasn't even any blood on the stone. It must have been washed away by the rain. My captain was furious, thinking that I had brought him out here for nothing more than an elaborate prank, and demanded I tell him where the other 4 were. Despite my insistence that they had been killed by the creature, he wrote me off as delirious. He ordered 2 of his men to take me back to the ship, while the rest of them started searching for the missing sailors. Hours passed, and the search party never found the missing sailors. What they did find were several empty beer cans at our picnic spot. The captain assumed that we had all gotten drunk, and the others had fallen into the ocean. I could tell some of the crew didn't believe the story. How could 4 men all fall over a rock face at the same time? But nobody argued. After all, it made a hell of a lot more sense than what I said happened. After searching the rest of the island for any hint of the missing sailors, we finally went with the captain's story, and they were declared dead. I was confined to my quarters for the rest of the voyage, and when we were stateside, I was discharged on the count of insanity. After I was released, I moved as far from the coast as I could. I've never gone to a beach since. Everyone believes that I had just hallucinated because of stress from the storm. Hell, even my mother thought I had been triggered because of some traumatic memory involving the ocean as a child. But I know what I saw, and I know that it's still out there. Because when we were leaving Barbuda, I was sitting in my quarters, looking out a porthole. The Victoria happened to pass by the secret beach we had found, and I could have sworn I heard the faintest sound of that monster's deep haunting tune.